What's up, everybody? Welcome to System Cappers Live. I'm David Wilson, and we're back again with another Friday stream where we get together as a community and talk about whatever topic I've come up with at literally the last minute, as always. Let me get the chat widget up. There it is. There's all the chat that's been queued up this whole time. Where did I leave off on the intro now? I think I said everything that I normally say, just the blather that comes out of my mouth as soon as I start streaming. Hello to the folks who are here so far. If you're on YouTube, say something, because I don't see anybody there. On the IRC side, we got a party in the chat. Let's see. Hello to Cal, Summer Emacs, Glyneth, Mike, Shom, Pie the Sailor, Ren, Purple G, Trev, Fade, Dave, Retro Pixel. All right. And Summer is shaking her hands in the air like Lucy, saying, "It's not the topic I wanted." Yeah, it's not the topic you wanted. I'm not going to talk about Python. Why would I want to talk about Python? Honestly, I'm not really a fan. However, I might talk about Python at some point in the future if people keep pestering me about it. So if you really want to see me talk about Python, just pester me. And then once I start ignoring the pestering, then we'll really have a problem. Cal says, stupid YouTube didn't start the stream as it started. Yeah, well, the stream also was how late? 5, 6, 7 minutes late. Because I committed the cardinal sin of streaming, which is I tried to update my system, which I thought was enough time. I started about like 40 minutes before the stream. I thought, okay, fine. Like, you know, it's been a while since I pulled on this machine. Maybe it won't take so long. No, it took a long time. 10 minutes before the stream, it gets to the point where it tells me, okay, we're updating the Grub bootloader now, and then it just hangs there. So who knows? Who knows what's going on with that? So I'm not updated after all, which is fine. It means the stream will work. But I may have to do some gymnastics a little bit in the stream to get the stuff working today. So we'll see. Maybe it's not so bad. Pie the Steeler says, Python sucks. RetroPixel says, Python has too few parentheses. Summer Emacs says Python IDE and Emacs. I made a video about that. Cal says talk about Highlang maybe. I did talk about that probably a year ago. I've done too many streams now. Nobody can keep track of all the topics I've talked about, even me. I mean, every week I just come up with some idea and we do a stream about it, and then I forget 3 months later what I've covered. That's fine. Hey, Judy. Rin says, so we're scheming the death of Python. No, Python will last forever. It will be, along with Perl, as one of the scripting languages of the apocalypse. So I don't think that we're going to lose Python anytime soon. Pi says, give it another chance. Which one? Highlang? Maybe. I don't know. I just don't really like it too much. I don't have a real problem with it. It's just, if I was going to use a language that converts a Lisp to some other language, I would stick with a scheme that compiles to C. Kind of like, well, okay, I guess Janet, technically speaking, is not a scheme, but it's close enough. VS Code stream, now Purple Jesus trolling. It would be really funny to do a VS Code stream, I think. And then whenever we see everything just works so easily out of the box with no trouble, then we're all going to be scratching our heads and wondering why we're futzing with Emacs configurations every day. Summer says, your video is 3 years old. It's as ancient as Fade's song collection. Well, let's not start, shaming people on the items they have that are relevant to their age. Because I'm going to lose there too. Shom says, are you still looking to build a streaming PC, or did you already do that? It's another one of those things where it's something I really want, but I'm so good at procrastinating that I've managed to procrastinate long past the point where I could actually build a new streaming PC. So like, I keep getting notifications from the local Amazon-like service here about all the deals on the things I've wish listed to build my rig. So I keep getting reminded that I should be building something, and I never do it because I procrastinate. So it needs to happen. I really... Oh, that was some clipping. Did you hear that? Was there a buzz? Sorry for that if there was. Anyway, point being, I'm procrastinating as always. Cal says, Python was my first programming language love. I can't stand it now. You know, Python is one of those languages that can be incredibly productive. You can get a lot of things done. There's a lot of great libraries for it, but I just don't really feel any joy writing Python. Something about it just doesn't really give me that Marie Kondo kind of sparking of joy that is necessary to want to stick with a programming language. Fade says, I'm listening to Rage Against the Machine at the moment. You must be dealing with mail exchange issues, Fade. ADHD, try represent. Man, you know, I never really thought I had ADHD until, you know, about 3 or so years ago, 4 years ago, and I realized, you know, it's actually a lot more difficult than I thought to get my stuff together. Eric says, make files. Trying to see what the context is on that one. And hi, Eric, by the way, if I didn't say hello to you. Summer says, I want to automate the boring stuff. Yeah, but I want to have a language that is a bit more fun to use to automate the boring stuff. I mean, Python's fine. It definitely works to automate stuff. I am not saying Python is not a language someone should use, okay? I'm not besmirching the good name of Python. I'm just saying, personally, for me, I'm not that interested in writing it. Thesim says, Wisp is the only parenthesis-less, man, that one's hard. Indentation-based thing I like. Yeah, Wisp is pretty great. I like it. Fade is, you know, getting spicy in the chat there. Careful, sir. You're going to have to be putting a franc in the swear jar, because now, actually, you're going to have to be putting a, what do they have in Canada? What is the currency there? I don't even know because I'm American. I have no idea what currency other countries have. Summer says, you told me to learn Python. Okay, sure. I told you to learn Python because actually you can do a lot with it. So it's worthwhile. And I think it's probably more practical than learning Scheme. So I would not try to tell you to learn Scheme because maybe you want to actually do something with it. And I'm really doing a bad job of presenting Scheme right now. Pi says, have we done a Shen video? I should do a video on Shen at some point. Canadians have Canucks in Canada. Okay. And Fade says dollars. Okay, put $1 in the swear jar, Fade. I agree with your assessment, but also we have to keep it moderately under control here. Agram says, hello, Agram. Hello, big fan of your Emacs series. Looking forward to the stream. Thank you very much. Hello, Bill. Nice to see you over in the YouTube side. Loonies. Loonies. Judy says, my condolences. And then again, I write C# and JavaScript for a living right now. Yeah, I did that too for a long time at a big company. It wasn't so bad. I actually liked writing JavaScript a lot more than I liked writing C#. C# is not bad, but JavaScript is a little bit more flexible. Okay, so where are we? I don't know if Dave is still around, but I just wanted to give a round of applause for Dave Thompson. It was his birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Dave. If I wasn't completely chicken, I would sing happy birthday. I would lead the whole audience of the stream in unison to sing happy birthday to you, but you probably don't want to hear that. Jose says, where's the chat displayed in the stream from? It is IRC. If you go to irc.libra.chat, there is a channel, systemcrackers-live, or just go to systemcrackers.net/live, and you will see it. I don't think Dave is actually in the chat. I saw him sometime before, but he's probably like walking his dog or, you know, doing something very humanly, like, you know, planting things in his garden. But happy birthday, Dave. All right. What else? Let's get into the news here. before I get completely off track. First of all, related to Scheme news, Andy Wingo is going to be speaking at the ICFP. Is that the International Consortium for Functional Programming? What does that conference stand for? Whoa, where's my cursor? ICFP. Dave's not here, man. Yeah, I know. ICFP, International Conference on Functional Programming. Sounds like a pretty cool event. You're going to have people, having a party, chatting about, monads and category theory and all sorts of fun stuff that people on this channel either know about or like, what are we talking about? Trev says, YouTube is so delayed for me compared to Twitch. So here's the deets I've been hearing over the last week. YouTube is reducing their investment in live streaming, and all of the big time streamers who had fat contracts to stream on YouTube have not been renewed in their contracts because YouTube is basically like, we just want to compete with TikTok. So we're going to just focus on shorts now. So probably all of the hardware resources that go to streaming are not really up to snuff anymore. So, Twitch sounds like the place to be yet again. That's okay, though. We're on both places. Okay, let me get back to it. So, Andy Wingo, I feel like this is a keynote, right? Is this a keynote? It's a talk, at least, at ICFP about Scheme on WebAssembly. It's tomorrow at 9 a.m. What time zone is this? Okay, it's Amsterdam, Berlin, etc., etc. So 9 a.m. Amsterdam time. I think that's pretty close to GMT or UTC. So anyway, he's giving a talk on basically the work that they've been doing on Hoot, which is the implementation of Guile that compiles to WebAssembly. So if you're interested in that project, you want to hear the latest information about Hoot development, probably a lot of stuff about garbage collection in there because that's the main thing that Andy's been working on recently. Plus, I know Dave's been working a lot on other things platform related recently. Hello, Dave. I'm glad you got to hear your happy birthday greetings. So yeah, this is a keynote for the Scheme workshop. Okay, so the Scheme workshop is like, 4 people and a half a pizza or something, right? I don't mean to besmirch the name of Scheme now, but it probably is not the biggest room in the house. But anyway, Andy Wingo is probably like the one of the marquee names in Scheme right now, so he's got his moment to give a Scheme keynote on Scheme on WebAssembly, which is great. Dave says some exciting Hoot stuff to share later today, just not in time for this stream. Well, that's cool. I'm glad to hear that. I want to get some more Hoot action. That kind of sounded wrong. I want to see some more Hoot improvements that I can use for projects in the very near future. Should I read this a little bit more? Hoot is on the cutting edge of WASM language runtimes using the newly exposed built-in garbage collection and tail call capabilities of web browsers. These facilities allows users to program the browser in a scheme that really feels like a scheme, go deep into the details of what the new WASM capabilities are, what affordances they provide, how Hoot works, vision for the future directions. Okay, so kind of an overview of what's happening with the Hoot project, which is still good. Summer says, wait, weren't you guys all into Scheme like 3 months ago? What happened to Scheme now? What did I miss? Did I say anything that we're not in the Scheme? I mean, we're still Scheme related here. However, Fade has been going and poisoning the minds of the youth, which more specifically, I mean, he has somehow managed to get Case to use Common Lisp. So our ranks are dwindling. Morale is at an all-time low. And I'm also using other languages at the moment. So I guess maybe you're right. Maybe Scheme is on the outs. Maybe like the fashion is moving on. This is like the Forever 21 of programming here. We're just, we're going to build them up and tear them down just as fast as they come through the gate. Beezum says, I still am. Scheme is great. Scheme is great, okay? It is great. Dave says, I've seen the talk and it's going to go over some real good technical details about compilation. Well, I love compilations, so I am going to watch that. Compilation is excellent. If you're interested in programming language implementation, you will enjoy it. I am interested in that. RetroPixel says, I'm still R7RS small fanboying. Yes, I think out of any published document, I have probably read the R7RS or R6RS specifications more than any. So more than the Bible, which I really haven't read that much, more than War and Peace, more than Little Women, more than Ethan Frome. I've read the R7RS specification more than all those. Why did I pick those? I don't know. It's just things that people tell you to read. Moby Dick. I've read R7RS small specification more than Moby Dick. That's what we do here. So Rin says, I've been learning Guix and Scheme, and now I'm adding GNU cache on top of that. Yeah, well, it's scriptable with Scheme, so that is kind of interesting. There's a lot of stuff that you can script with Scheme. So it's a cool thing to do. Sam says, what aspect of programming is the highest to overcome and jump as a hurdle? I think it is whenever you're reading a new book about a programming language or a website about a programming language, tutorial, etc. It's getting off your butt and actually starting to write the code. That's the biggest hurdle, in my experience. I will just read books on programming languages all day, but until I actually sit my ass down and start writing the code, that's like the tallest hurdle possible because you're not going to do anything until you start writing it. Sam says, I am very lame. Well, I don't know you, Sam, but just because you want to learn programming doesn't mean that you're lame if you are having trouble to get started learning programming. It's not very easy to learn programming. I mean, no matter what somebody will tell you, book titles like Teach Yourself C in 21 Days, which I actually did learn C from to some degree, but still, the marketing is lying to you, okay? Programming is fun, but I would not say that it's necessarily the easiest thing in the world to wrap your mind around whenever you haven't done it before. Now, after you've learned like 2 or 3 programming languages, then it becomes a lot easier, and then you can kind of just move around in the milieu, as they say, of programming languages and kind of find your way. Unless you're switching paradigms, then things get a little bit difficult again. If you're into imperative programming languages, like most mainstream languages like JavaScript, Python, even C, C++, once you switch to functional, then that's another big hurdle in my experience. Like it took me a while to really kind of grok what functional programming was trying to do, especially if you're dealing with pure functional programming and immutable data structures, like with languages such as Clojure or OCaml, maybe Haskell too, but for some reason I just have an aversion to Haskell. Like I'm not even gonna bother learning it. So don't follow my lead on that. I have very strange reasons to choose things or not choose things. I won't elaborate on that further. I'll give you one example. I have never used Chicken Scheme because it's called Chicken Scheme. I don't care how good the Scheme implementation is. Because it's called Chicken Scheme, I don't want to go around telling people, hey, I'm using Chicken Scheme. Rename the project, I'll check it out. Sorry. Have you realized yet that we're just making things up here? Okay. Sorry, Sam, did I answer your question? What is the essence of scripting? Is program agnostic? Is there like a concrete example? Okay, so that's a good question. This sort of concept keeps coming up to me in the last 2 days. You're the third person who has mentioned to me that they would like to understand higher level what programming is, or sort of programming idioms that transcend specific languages. I would like to try to write some things on that and make videos on it. We'll see. I don't know. I've got too many things on the slate already. Fade says all syntax languages are ugly. No, I find F# pretty nice. OCaml, so F# is derived from OCaml and the general ML family of languages. But OCaml tends to have a heavier syntax than F#. F# kind of like got rid of some stuff, I think, right? So I think F# looks pretty nice, but I also think it can be a little inscrutable at times because the lack of like parentheses and commas between parameters, so you sometimes don't realize that you're partially applying a procedure call or function call because you forgot one of the parameters at the end. So it could be a double-edged sword, but it also can look super clean and nice. Bade says, S expressions are the opposite of syntax languages. Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I agree with that. Sam says, I'm far too basic, but would scripting be meta or what? Well, scripting in general, I mean, scripting is programming. I don't know if that's what you're asking. Is scripting programming? I mean, what is the essence of scripting? Scripting is line by line telling the computer to do something that's useful, I would say. Judy says, F# for me gets a little too workaround because we got rid of the OCaml stuff, which lets us know what type this is. Oh, well, it's because it's doing type inference? Doesn't OCaml do type inference, or do they do pre-declared type signatures? F# does pretty well on type inference, though, I found. So Fade says in the Twitch chat, it's not like scripting is programming light. No, I mean, there's a very wide gray zone between programming, application development, and scripting, because really, any sufficiently advanced script has to kind of become a program in a way, because you need abstractions, okay? Like if you have a 5,000 line script that is literally just straight line shell calls, shell invocations and loops and stuff like that, then it kind of gets unmanageable. So eventually to maintain your sanity, you have to start injecting some kind of abstraction like functions or modules or something. And if you're using a language like Python or even JavaScript or other dynamic languages, I mean, you're kind of living in that gray zone the whole time, because you can just run main.py or whatever script you have, and then it can load modules and do whatever you want. Okay. What defines meta? Yeah, meta to me means sort of the mental model of solving problems with code and the different manifestations of how you solve problems using categories of programming language features. I know that sounds super vague, but that's what meta is, I guess. It's just vague. Is it possible to overlay commands in and out of methods, bodies? Yeah. Okay. Trev says OCaml has a pretty weird module system. I do like the syntax, though. I haven't really looked at OCaml in depth, but I am pretty intrigued by it, because you can do native compilation of applications, I think. Like you can do standalone binaries. Like the tool chain for OCaml is pretty solid, I think. Also, they've got, I think, really good continuation style implementation, if I'm understanding that correctly, or at least the compiler uses continuations as an intermediate compilation representation. If you've ever read the book Compiling with Continuations by Apple, A-P-P-E-L, Compiling with Continuations. I mean, I guess it's kind of talking about, I don't know if it's ML or standard ML that they're using. It may be different than OCaml, but still, it's ML. So I don't know. You see a lot of ML style programming in this book. It's kind of heavy. And once they start going through the process of unrolling, showing the compilation of imperative code more or less into continuation style code, then you're kind of ripping your brain inside out. It's a little bit painful to read sometimes. See you, Summer. Sorry, have I gone too far off track at this point? All right. So, yes, Scheme on WebAssembly. It's happening. That's a talk you should watch tomorrow, theoretically. Maybe it's today for you, if it's super late in North America. Not sure. Okay. Back to the news. The Spritely Institute, or in other words, Dave, has announced that Spritely will be having office hours for those who are interested to come and talk about the latest developments with Spritely Institute technologies and projects. They're doing a new trial of engineering office hours. Let's see. You can reserve a slot. 2 slots open on Wednesday, September 18th at 2 p.m. If you want to just say hello or listen, you can join in the meeting room. So it looks like on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time, North America style. So that'd be cool if you're interested in Hoot and the other things that are going on at the Spritely Institute to join up and just sort of, ask questions or just generally show your support, because we like the Spritely Institute folks. Dave says you can stream all the ICFP talks on YouTube. So let me actually drop a link for that in here. So stream the talks live here. ACM SIGPlan /streams. Let me double check that URL, make sure it actually goes somewhere and it's not going to take you to some kind of Bitcoin scam site. And there it is. Appears to be the one. Wow. So you can, you guys want to watch some Haskell live stream right now? There we go. There we go. So here we go. Thanks everybody for watching. I'm just going to play this video the rest of the way through, and we'll see you next time. I can't actually hear it. Can you hear it?
There are many ways to break.
Never mind. I'm just kidding anyway. All right. Some sad news next. The emacs.ch Mastodon instance is shutting down. Maybe, how long ago was it? Was it a year, 2 years ago that I promoted this instance for people who want to join the Fediverse or Mastodon and have a sort of an Emacs focused or friendly Mastodon instance. Today, Lewis, who is the primary maintainer of the, administrator, let's say. He's the one who's launched the instance. There's some other administrators there. He's announced that he's going to, after a 3-month period, he's going to shut down the instance. So he's giving you 3 months to move your account somewhere else. Thankfully, it's quite easy to migrate your Mastodon account to another instance. So if you go to another instance that is open for registration, you can create an account there, and then you can go into your profile settings and then migrate your old account, which does migrate your followers. I don't know if it migrates your posts, but I know it definitely migrates your following and follower lists. But I would imagine that many of you here also have many other people who are on emacs.ch, so this is going to be a whole kerfuffle. But anyway, the stated reason behind this is because it's extremely difficult to host a sort of public service social media site, not just because of the people who are users on your own instance. It's because of federation and how federation works. Just by virtue of things that your users are doing, they're pulling certain types of content onto your server and interacting with other servers, and it just gets really complicated, I think. This is a consequence of how the Fediverse was designed. You're playing in a network with a bunch of other people, and you, the person who owns the server and maintains the server, now have to contend with a bunch of crazy stuff that most people would not really want to have to deal with unless they were being paid a lot of money, because it's a thankless and painful job. Okay, so I completely understand the desire to end the nightmare and shut down the instance, because it's not easy. I'm actually surprised at the Mastodon.org maintainers who have kept that instance up for so many years. I think that I created an instance on Mastodon.org at Shom's suggestion in 2020, probably. And, that instance has been running strong since then. Kudos to them for keeping it up. I kind of feel like this might be an opportunity for some people to try managing their own super small instances. However, there are challenges of managing a super small instance if you don't have other people joining. You have, kind of the weight of shuttling all the information around between servers. Like, for instance, if you follow people, if you have your own Mastodon server, I'm no expert here. I'm just going based on information that I've seen. If you have your own Mastodon server or Fediverse server, whichever one you want to use, and you follow people from different instances, you're basically having to download all the content that they posted to those other instances. It's not like your Mastodon client that you use on your phone or on your computer is like reaching out to those other instances to get the images whenever you look at it. No, it's actually your server is cloning all the same stuff over. So it actually ends up being kind of burdensome on you, the person who's hosting this thing, because you need space to pull all the stuff in. So that said, I think the only sane way in the end is to use your own instance, but I don't really know what the cost of that's going to be long term. You know, if you have your own server sitting at home that you're willing to do that with, is probably fine, but there will be challenges. So I don't know. For me, I'm just staying on Mastodon. Unfortunately, Mastodon is not currently open to registration. Let's see, create account. So it's invite only. I don't know if people that are on Mastodon can send invites, but it's been a while. And this may be the reason why they're still open, is that they don't have new people coming in so often. Okay, so new users will need to have an invite link that's been generated by an existing user. Generally speaking, Mastodon has been a good instance for me. So those of you who are currently Mastodon users and are able to invite people, you know, you might consider inviting some emacs.ch folks. I would be really surprised if Mastodon.org goes down at some point, but who knows? You know, maybe we're kind of reaching a tipping point here where it's becoming more obvious that maintaining a Fediverse server is not easy. Okay. So Dave is foreshadowing some things about what Spritely is doing in the space, but ActivityPub Fediverse is still the best thing we have at the moment. Yeah. Okay, so yes, so just to let you know, if you're on emacs.ch, you got to start thinking about where you're going to go next. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is in a decentralized social media system. Okay, how long have I been talking here? 40 minutes? Cool, great. Maybe it's just 30. So today, what I would like to do is continue some work that I have started after last week's stream. So last week we talked about this really cool language and tool chain called Janet. Janet is I would say a Clojure plus Lua plus kind of scheme inspired Lisp language. It doesn't call itself a Lisp, but it is Lispy in its way. That compiles to C, but it doesn't compile everything to C. It actually has its own bytecode interpreter, like you see with many other high-performance interpreted languages. It basically compiles its code to an in-memory bytecode format, and then it can run it on its own custom VM. However, Janet is also capable of producing applications where it's baked in its own runtime and all of the precompiled images of all the code that you have compiled with it. So it's really easy to make small standalone binaries that you can run as tools or programs that you want to ship to other platforms, etc. So I found it to be pretty interesting, and I couldn't kind of help myself. I couldn't help but play with it more because I was kind of curious about it. The first thing that I wanted to do was to try to package the JPM tool. That's the Janet project manager, not package manager. It's a project manager, which is the secondary tool that we used last week with a little bit of fiddling at first, but we eventually got it working. It's not currently packaged for Guix. Janet is. The latest version of Janet is packaged for Guix, but JPM is not. There have been a few attempts at this prior to me trying it. One of them was a couple years ago, but I don't think it ever got anywhere. And then now I have started working on it, and also Omar Bassam let me know in IRC this week that he has been working on it as well, and he's actually got a patch out to Guix for it. So we might try taking a look at Omar's work too. No, I missed a 5. Okay. So, yeah, adding JPM package for Janet. Any responses to this so far? Yeah, as usual in the Guix Devel mailing list, or Guix patches mailing list, patches just languished for a little while. So we're going to continue on the work that I've been doing so far, which I will show you and explain to you in a moment. I just sort of wanted to set the context here that JPM is intended to manage dependencies for Janet projects as well as to build those projects, because generally there is C code compilation involved. So to package JPM effectively for Guix, we're going to have to deal with a few different constraints. The first being that we need to make sure that the compilation environment is set up correctly, which means that there are some environment variables that Janet and JPM both understand that need to be set correctly. We'll talk about that in a minute, to make sure that Janet and JPM installed via Guix will work, okay? So there's some work to be done there. I've done some of the work. Omar's done some of the work. I'm gonna see if we can reconcile some of these things. I'm not trying to replace what Omar's doing. If Omar's patch gets merged, I'll be very happy. What I want to do is just use this as an opportunity to work on it myself a little bit more, and then to show you kind of the process of me going through it, because it's just a good, hey Omar, we just started talking about you. It's a good opportunity to show some like real world Guix package hacking, because this one is a little bit weird and it requires a little bit of tweaking. Omar's approach is a little bit different than mine, so I actually kind of want to pro and con the approaches and check it out a little bit, just sort of see what we can do to make progress. Okay, so other limitations. There is a key variable, environment variable for Janet, which is the Janet tree, which is supposed to indicate the folder path where all of the dependency packages are installed, so that Janet can then, it's basically the module loading path for Janet. The thing about Janet is they differ from other programming platforms or programming languages where they don't accept multiple paths as the sort of module path. So like in Guile scheme and in many common Lisp implementations, Emacs itself, the environment variable that controls the load path effectively for the language accepts multiple paths, because you kind of need that. You need a way to, aggregate together a set of separate module folders into your overall search path for modules in the language. Janet currently doesn't have that. I actually have a thought on how to accomplish this, and I think a previous attempt at this may also have implied that, and it kind of got in my head, and now I'm thinking about it. But because we can't have multiple paths in that variable, we need to take another approach, and that might actually require the use of a Guix profile, because in Guix profiles, you can actually aggregate multiple paths for packages that are related to a specific type of program, let's say, and then put all their paths together into a single environment variable. I probably should be showing this while I'm talking about it and not just like hand waving, because a lot of people are gonna get lost. We'll get into it, okay? So maybe I'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about it a bit more when we get there. So let me check the chat real quick. Omar says, thank you for mentioning my work. Of course, man. This is how things happen in a community. We have to get things done. And everyone's contributions are valuable, because, where one person gets stuck, another person can kind of, show the way. So it's good for everybody to be hacking away at the same stuff, and also to sort of get recognized for that. Let's see. Judy points at symlinks. Yes. Well, it's not only just symlinks. It's also the fact that each Guix package that gets built and installed into your /gnu/store folder has its own version of the root file system hierarchy in it. /lib, /bin, etc., /share. So if you have a programming language or platform that expects to install things in the normal Linux file system hierarchy folder structure, and that you should expect that there's only going to be one /lib path or /share path or /user share path, then Guix is going to completely break that assumption, and you're going to have to find some way to solve that problem. So, yeah. So Omar says, I'm relatively new to Guix packaging, so I'll learn more from you approaching this, but also looking forward to hearing your feedback. Yeah, let's try it out and see what happens. Dave says, random observation. I noticed the other day that the janet.wasm file served by the Janet homepage is only 800 KB, quite small. I'm pretty impressed with how small Janet programs compile to by default. The actual core runtime and language features compiled across to a C application are about 1 megabyte. And can be less depending on compiler optimizations. Also, it does a pretty good job of not compiling in things that you're not using. It doesn't do full tree shaking, I think, but it might do somewhat tree shaking. But I think it really only just compiles what modules you've actually imported at different parts of your code. So You know, it's not doing whole program optimization, but it is getting rid of things that you're not actively importing. So it does lend itself to small binaries, which I think is pretty nice. Let me check the chat on the other side. Perco Pop says, one could use symlinks to centralize all the modules into one dir. You could, but I don't think you would want to do that with Guix. So with Guix, generally what will happen is there's a way to identify a given environment variable for a set of packages so that whenever you install those packages, they update a given environment variable in the profile in which those packages get installed so that you can aggregate paths for inclusion in an environment variable that then will be used by some other program or programs. Okay, that's how Emacs works in Guix. When you install Emacs packages using Guix as the package manager, you have to have Emacs itself and all the Emacs packages installed in the same profile, because that profile is going to be the aggregation. It's going to have the aggregation of all the individual paths where those Emacs packages are installed, because they all have their own emulation of the root file system path effectively. So all those individual little Linux file system hierarchy emulations in these little package folders now are going to be aggregated together in one long list of file paths in the Emacs load path environment variable. Then when Emacs starts, it's going to read that Emacs load path environment variable from that profile, and then it's going to add all those paths to the load path for Emacs packages, let's say. So that's how they get found. In fact, Fade says, is there some technical reason why having a list of paths in the environment variable is verboten? It's better to try to let Guix manage that and not try to do it yourself. It may be possible to hack that, but as far as I know, I could be wrong about this. In fact, I may be very wrong about this, but there's not a way for a package to explicitly set an environment variable in a profile. But I'm probably lying about that. So maybe we should look into it. Anyway, I want to look at something really quick. Guix. I'm looking for Emacs XYZ. Maybe not that. Maybe not that. So Emacs denote. Let's just take a look at a package. So we're kind of off track, but this is maybe instructive. The Emacs denote package is using the Emacs build system. All right. Really, with the Emacs packages, for the most part, all you reference is the Git repository, the version, the hash for that version, and the Emacs build system takes care of the rest. So if we were to go to the Emacs build system, now there's two different places where this shows up. I think that one is the right one. We're going to find out though. So Emacs load path. Here we go. Expand load paths to the inputs whose code resides in subdirectories are properly found. I'm trying to find the place where it's actually putting together the paths in the load path. Okay, so standard phases for build. We're unpacking. After unpack, we're expanding a load path. Add install to native load path. Okay, native load path, that's fine. Append the native site list. This is probably a good place to look at it. So this is a build phase for an Emacs package. Let's see. String split, get env native load path, install directory string append the output path of the package with the native site list, set env. So apparently you just run set env and it picks it up. Is this a special version of set env that can record the value? Because this seems to be doing the aggregation here. I think the package itself doesn't really handle fooling with environment variables, but it appears that the build system steps. Now, when I say build system, what I mean is for Guix to be able to build any package, it needs to know how to build it. So a normal C program, you would use the GNU build system, I believe it's called. And that really just runs, automake and make, etc., to compile a program using the typical tool chain for GNU projects. So it has, the step where it runs configure, and then the step where it runs make, and then the step where it runs make test for running tests, and then the step where it runs make install. But it installs that into that special GNU store folder for that project. So any package for a different type of language, like let's say Python or Go or Rust, etc., they're going to have their own build system that knows how to invoke the build tools for that language and also install the packages into the right place. So by that logic, we have an Emacs build system. And also by that logic, we would end up having a Janet build system that knew how to build Janet projects and to use JPM as the way to build them. Because JPM is the thing that orchestrates building dependencies for Janet projects to compile that. So we're seeing here that add install to native load path is a build step, a custom build step in the Emacs build system that apparently is just reading the current value of Emacs native load path from the profile, I'm thinking, splitting that into individual strings, adding the new output path for the current package, and then resetting that with the new path appended to it with the colon. So if I go back to the add install to native load path, you'll see that we do have those two there. Load path. So we're doing getenv and setenv here too. Yep, so the same thing. So we basically have a way to manipulate that variable when we install a package to a profile. So for Janet, we would have to do the same thing. However, because like I said, the Janet tree variable, let me see if I can find that actually. So there's documentation here, documentation about JPM. Janet tree. The Janet tree environment variable can be used to set the tree the JPM installs things to. By default, running Janet from the command line separately will not use modules in the custom tree. You will likely want to modify Janet path as well. There's two different environment variables that we have to contend with here, which is part of the problem that I had trying to package JPM, because depending on what you set Janet path to, some things in JPM stop working because it needs to have access to the include files to build Janet into a program. So it's a whole mess there. And I think that it still needs to be untangled. Omar may have figured that out. I need to go and look at his change again. All right. Man, it's hot in here. Cool. So as you can see, if you set Janet tree to a local path, this is kind of the place where it expects to see all the modules, and JPM is kind of handling the installation and compilation of your dependencies to whatever you say your Janet tree is, which could be your root folder structure, slash user slash local, whatever. This is an example of setting Janet tree to a local directory to install all the dependencies. It's not something that is, I don't know if it's something that's known by Janet specifically. Janet has to have a load path because it needs to be able to load modules without JPM. You should be able to install and load modules without JPM if you do it manually. You have to put them in a folder structure somewhere. So I'm guessing it must know Janet tree. But it doesn't allow you to have multiple paths, and that's the original problem I was talking about. So we have to kind of come up with our own solution for that. And my solution, to get back to that, would probably be to use a... So one other thing that Guix does for profiles, if you didn't know this, is, let's see, run/current system/profile. If you check out a profile folder, in fact, I think if I go into a shell, echo Guix profile. Nope. Am I wrong about that? Maybe I'm wrong about that. Okay, yeah, I'm using Guix Home, so it's not the same thing. Anyway, you can also look at my Guix Home profile as well. So what Guix does, it actually aggregates all of those little mini folders that it creates for all the individual projects into one kind of amalgamated file system hierarchy in the profile. So you effectively have the root file system hierarchy inside of the profile path. This is what you're seeing here right now inside of my Guix Home profile. If you look in the lib folder, it's kind of like all the lib files. And those are all symlinked over to the GNU store paths where they come from. So the idea is that you might be able to use the current profile path where Janet is installed to refer to the location of the Janet tree, the JPM tree, let's say. I feel like that's a little bit risky. Not 100% sure if that's going to work, though. Let's see. Perkapop says, can I define multiple profiles in the same home configuration? No, it's one big profile. All right. Check in chat. Let's see. Judy says, well, couldn't one call out to Guix through some API? I probably wouldn't do that. RetroPixel says, would it work if the package puts a file in etc. profile D is something that sh? The only way to do that is by using the etc. What's it called? No, is it special file service? Guix special files? Extra, it's an extra special file. It's extra special. This is why you're gonna put it there. So special files service type. And this is where you can put things inside of funky paths, let's call them. Is that right? Am I right about that? There is something where you can drop files in the etc. folder, for sure. Maybe a special file service type. This is the service that sets up special files, such as bin.sh. An instance of it is part of base services. So yeah, you can drop things in various places. Judy says, I'm still amazed at the amount of effort put into Guix Nix to fix a thing we brought on ourselves. Yeah, you know, when you fly too close to the sun, when aiming for perfection, you will inevitably be burned by the flames of circumstance in the Linux ecosystem. Zerka says, I have a question. Does GNU Guix break like Arch? Not in the same way. You can roll back a failed system update just fine, and it works great. However, if you run Guix pull, it may be possible that your configuration no longer loads correctly, and then you have to spend a lot of time trying to track down what changed in the Guix code base to make your configuration code actually run again. So it's a different kind of breaking. You're trading one for the other. Personally, I have not run into a large number of issues with things breaking whenever I pull an update. But I've also whittled my system configuration down to a very minimal state that is harder to break. So that also helps a lot. Hey, Sector. What you've missed so far is just me waxing poetic on a number of topics and not really getting to the point. But hey, it's Friday. All right. So Judy says, Cargo's dependency graph reminds me too much of package.json. Yeah. Rust is very much like, NPM package ecosystem, just because of the tendency to, what would be the right word? Is over-specialized the right word? Where you have like a tiny package that does one thing. I really don't think that's a good idea. Micro packages, yeah. So one of the things I liked about what I saw in the Judy documentation is that they're like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't make tiny little packages. What you should do is, if there's a number of useful functionalities that would go together, like maybe you would use them commonly, put them into one repository, and then whenever a person needs those, they only need to install one kind of larger repository, but only import the stuff they want, and only the modules they import get compiled into the program. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You don't have 1,000 dependencies installed locally for one project. You have less dependencies that are kind of more aggregation of useful stuff together, and then only the stuff you actually use gets built into your program. Hello, Robin. Robin says, Guix install left pad. Has anyone gone through that exercise yet? Well, what we really need is someone to package up enough pieces of software that all depend on left pad, because technically they all do. Isn't it like the single table leg that's, in that big image of the software ecosystem that XKCD made? There's that one little table leg that's holding the whole thing up, and that is left pad. As we found out in 2017, 2018, whenever left pad got privated and then CI started failing for all JavaScript projects everywhere. Hey, Fikri. Fikri, congratulations on getting married. I saw your wedding photos, and they look incredible, dude. Like, okay, so, the kind of weddings that I'm used to seem very pale in comparison to Fikri's wedding photos. That's like some of the most elaborate and lavish sort of outfits and setting for a wedding I think I've ever seen. So kudos to you, Fikri, for having a really awesome looking wedding. I don't know. I don't really think you can link to the photos of your wedding in the chat, so people don't really know what I'm talking about, but Fikri's on the Fediverse, so you can find him. Let's see. Micro packages is a great way to put it. So, micro packages, much like microplastics, are ruining the environment. All of the excess heat from the installation and shuttling around of micro packages is just going to ruin the environment. And we're probably going to find little pieces of micro packages in our bloodstream and in very unfortunate places in our bodies. Whenever we start to look into these things, in probably 10 years from now, you're going to find a little bit of pieces of, some React helpers in one place and left pad in another, maybe some date helpers somewhere else. I think it's not going to be good. We're going to have to swear off micro packages at some point because we're all going to get cancer from that. Shom says, to play devil's advocate, the big repo structure makes getting changes upstreamed more difficult. It depends on how big the repos are. I'm not advocating for huge monolithic repos. They have their benefits sometimes, but they are also challenges. Shom says, micro packages, microplastics, microservices, and microaggressions, all bad. Yes, all the micro things, they just kind of add up, They add up until you reach a boiling point where you just can't take it anymore, and you start going network on everything. Is that too old of a reference? What was that classic line from the movie Network? Someone can pull that up. If Summer was here, Summer would probably know it because yes, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what's going to happen with, I think that's actually happening now. I think there's a little bit of a backlash going with microservices at the moment where people are like, yeah, I'm going back to monoliths because microservices are idiotic and they hurt and they're very difficult to maintain. And really, it's just been a big con by the major cloud providers. I'm talking to you, AWS, to get you to pay for services that you don't really need because they're telling you that, oh, your service is not going to scale unless you have microservices and you use our hosted Kubernetes and Redis custom branded services. I apologize if I offend any former or future employers by saying that, but do you really need it? Do you need micro packages? Do you need microservices? You definitely don't need microaggressions. But sometimes whenever your eye twitches funny, things get interpreted funny ways. I don't know. I'm completely joking right now. Don't take me seriously. Trev says, what did I just walk back into? Dude, it's Friday and I haven't eaten yet. RetroPixel says, you're saying microservices is a plot from big service to sell more service? It couldn't be. It couldn't be. Why would we think that cloud providers would not want to sell you more things? They get you in, they give you some free usage on some nice stuff, and they kind of nickel and dime you for the rest of your life. And then they make it really hard to get out because now you're depending on all this kind of custom stuff that they put together. And now you got to like re-implement all the architecture yourself with off-the-shelf programs to make it kind of look like what you did before. I don't know, man. For me, I'm just gonna have a server with a SQLite database because nobody uses the shit that I make, so it doesn't really matter, does it? Let's see, actor model as service. Shom says, I guess AWS stopped sponsoring the streams. Yeah, I dropped that whole act because I think I confused some people, and I don't know, man. Like it was a funny bit. It was a funny bit. No, Judy. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that because I might have to be employed by those people in the future. So I don't want to be upsetting anyone. I worked on Azure-related things, and I enjoyed working on Azure-related things. A lot of nice people, cool stuff that I worked on. So I'm not going to say anything bad about that. But I will say many bad things about AWS because I have no intention of ever working for Amazon. So go to hell, Amazon, is all I got to say. I'm joking. I'm joking. You know, this is a live stream. This is meant to be entertaining to some degree. Shom says, please join the waiting list for my AI tool that will offer all microservices as a macro service. We're looking for round A seed funding. Well, I know why you say that, Judy. This is why I can't do it. Yeah, so did I not just see something today? Somebody launching something that's kind of like AI for service deployment or something. So really what's happening with AI right now, to go on another tangent, is the new scam is to make everyone so dependent on AI because nobody knows how to do anything anymore that you have to continue using AI. It's exactly the same scam. It's the same scam. Make you dependent on some stuff that you never needed to begin with, and then make it so that you don't know how to do it anymore. So now you're basically dependent on the vendor to survive. I don't know, man. Like, okay, if you want to use AI, use like the open source stuff that's around. Don't be using the big AIs. I mean, I do use it a little bit myself, but like, don't be depending on it. Don't be letting it write your code for you, because if you don't know how to write that code, like ChatGPT is not going to be there for you whenever you stop paying your bill. Russell says, prod ready, where we're going, we don't have load. Yeah, that's about the state of my stuff. Russell, by the way, I'm sorry I didn't reply to your email. I actually have an answer for you, but I haven't gotten back to it yet. I haven't forgot about you, though. Okay. Mike says, what's wrong with AWS? Fade says, their web interface is a crime against humanity. Okay, I mean, sure, that's one thing you could say. I'm just saying that cloud providers are incentivized to confuse you. And trap you in an ecosystem that is not very easy to get out of, because they give you nice stuff and make certain things easier for you, but that's sort of always the scam, right? Like someone tries to make your life a little bit too easy, and then you realize that you become too dependent on it, and it's like the sunk cost fallacy at that point. Like you can't really get out because you've already invested so much into the thing. Judy says that she's serving a fresh round of SAP. Yeah, it's another instance of this kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe big CRM stuff is kind of unavoidable. I don't really think that there's a way to get away from using huge CRMs if you're the type of company that needs that stuff. I have never used a thing like that in my life, but I am not the target audience for such a thing. Sector says, to play devil's advocate, I did have a good use for AI and learning about the Steam Web API. AI can be extremely helpful as an aid to learning. I'm more talking about the increasing narrative. Sorry, the narrative that keeps getting built that now AI will be able to play a role in automatically writing code for you and managing things for you. Because the more you delegate that to something that you don't have control over, the less you know about what is happening, especially if you're a business owner or you work for a business or something like that. I mean, I guess you have to be working for a business to get paid, but all right, okay, whatever. Let's move past that wrong point. The more you depend on it, the less freedom you have. So, not to sound like Stallman, but it's kind of right. You know, the more you depend on this sort of proprietary stuff that does things for you and makes your life all nice, the less freedom you have. So, if you're using a local AI that has a good model, then you're okay, because at least you have that. And in theory, you should be able to continue running that. That's not so bad, but I still wouldn't allow myself to become too dependent on AI to write code for me, because it's almost like brain rot. If you let AI keep writing code for you and become dependent on that being a primary part of your workflow to solve problems, then eventually you're going to get more and more lazy. And I don't know, you won't forget how to write code, but you're going to accomplish things that you wouldn't have been able to do without spending time learning or thinking. And you're going to be at a disadvantage when it comes time to solve the problem. And when it comes to understanding problems in a code base, a big code base, AI is really not all there yet when it comes to asking it questions about what is going to cause a certain bug that the AI created by the code that it wrote. This was not intended to be an anti-AI stream, and I'm not anti-AI. I actually do use AI for idea generation at times, but that's kind of it. I was using Copilot for a while, and it was a little bit too good, and I got rid of it because of the reasons I'm mentioning. Okay, Robin says, this is why I only program in Malbolge. That sounds like an evil language. Sounds like the name of a warlock, and it must be evil. I don't know. I haven't actually looked at it. I don't know what it is. Okay. Cycler says, I was not a huge fan of Copilot. It got in the way and was hard to read with a screen reader. I would imagine that's very true. So, Sector is a good person to talk to if you want to know what life is like using a screen reader for your computing experience. And I imagine having a code assistant tool just continuously crapping a bunch of new code blocks into your buffer as you're typing must make it very difficult to focus, because now it's like, or blah, 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 blah. Like just a new code block appears and now it starts reading it. Yeah, exactly. Sector says, from what I remember, it just read it in as all as one big gob. I am not surprised. And it probably doesn't stop talking. I don't know how you cancel an active read on a screen reader. Probably there's a way to do that, but still, like, it has to be annoying. You're trying to finish your own thought, and you get this thing talking to you with the bad, poorly designed code that the AI decided that you needed. My God, can we start like actually working on the project now? Can I stop talking? Any package for Emacs org mode live preview? There are some. I don't remember them at the moment. Sector says in Emacs is Control ES, otherwise it's just Control. Cool. Excuse me. Okay, let's get back to it. So let's take a look at the package definition that I had already started working on. I'm going to copy this over to a folder. Retro Pixel says procrastinating stream when? I don't know, man. Should all streams just be me doing nothing but just talking? Because that would be slightly easier than what I do now, but probably less interesting. Let's see. I want to go into my dot files and drop this somewhere. What did I just do? Get out of here. Dot files, David Will, packages. I'm going to call this lisp.scm because this is related to, it's kind of a peer to the Lisp module of packages inside of the Guix repo. So this is my starting point for the Janet JPM package. pretty typical boilerplate, let's say. We're describing what the package is here. I'm also keeping the commit for this because JPM is not a fully released tool yet, and you kind of have to follow master a little bit to get the latest stuff, or let's say follow head. So Janet, JPM, GitHub. So the last release, the last tag, let's say, was in 2022. You definitely don't want to use that. So you're gonna have to use the latest commit. And thankfully the latest commit was only 6 months ago, which, you know, kind of surprising, but that's okay. We have the commit here, the commit hash. Package name, I am kind of creating a synthetic version using 1.1.0 because that's kind of the current version, plus a substring of the commit hash because we're just saying this is 1.1.0 offset by this other commit. See you, show 'em. Pulling the package, all the usual stuff. Okay, I'm not really going to describe all the details of Guix packaging. We can do that another time. What I will tell you though is that I needed to customize this a bit. So like I was saying before, Janet and JPM both have special environment variables they're looking at to determine where to look for certain aspects of the Janet runtime or files needed to compile Janet applications. So the way that you install JPM is by cloning the repo currently, which obviously is the same thing that happens with Guix, but you clone the repo and then you run a bootstrapping script that is a Janet script. You run it with Janet, so you need Janet installed to run JPM to, let's say, to bootstrap JPM because it's a bunch of Janet code that gets invoked dynamically. So we're not going to follow the normal GNU build system for this because there's a different process in play. So I'm starting off by modifying the standard build phases of the GNU build system. I'm turning off tests, at least for now, because I would have to customize that build step as well because running tests for JPM is slightly different as well. But let's go on without that for now. I think there also is not a make file here. So because there's not a make file and because there's no auto make files for JPM, we can't use the normal GNU build process, but that's okay because we're just going to sort of move on from that. So we're modifying these standard build phases. I'm removing the configure step because there's no configure script, so fine, we'll get rid of that. I'm also deleting the install step because JPM will install itself with its own script. Omar says, I used a trivial build system as we don't need make. That's probably a fine way to do it as well because you're kind of just skipping a lot of those steps, but there may be things in there that could be useful. I did notice one or two things. And I'm not sure if trivial build system actually puts them in. Like for instance, it will look over shebang lines in script files and update them to the correct interpreter path for the programs that you're using in your inputs. So that's one thing that can be useful. So I'm just sticking with this for now, but we could actually experiment with using trivial build system later if necessary. Also, there is something that they do inside of the Project Janet. I can't remember if I needed to do this in the end, but there's a weird thing that it does when it installs its files. So if you go look at, what file is it? So first of all, I'm going to look at the project.janet file. So project.janet is kind of like the package.json of Janet files or of Janet projects. Can I click on it? Yes, let's click on it. Here we go. I'm sorry I'm making you look at the GitHub interface. Let me know if it's unreadable. There is a line here somewhere, hard code syspath. So there's a certain type of build output for a Janet project called a bin script, which is effectively a Janet script file that can be turned into a script that has a shebang line at the top. If you don't know what a shebang is, it's like that hash exclamation point / bin / sh that you see on top of script files sometimes, bash scripts or shell scripts. That is something that the Linux runtime, what would you call that? The system reads that first line of the file to, if you try to execute a file that's set to executable, it might, if it doesn't see that it's an ELF binary, it will try to read that first line from the file and see if it actually represents a shebang line, which tells Linux what program to use to execute that file. Okay, Robin says the kernel, yes. Fade says it's a shell convention, yes, right? So it's being interpreted as the program to use to execute this file. So point being, saying you have a bin script here basically says, I want you to take this Janet file and add a shebang line to the top. This hardcode syspath true part is some extra thing that it inserts to hardcode the path to where Janet is installed. That was causing problems for me because what it does is it tries to set that before it tries loading any of its dependencies, and it ends up setting it to the wrong place. So I had to turn that off. So what I'm doing here is adding another build step before we actually build the code to get rid of that. I'm trying to remove this line. I'm using the substitute procedure here to look at the project.janet file and effectively just wipe that line from the file so that that doesn't get included. So that's one of the things that you can do with Guix packages, which you will often have to do, is tweak build scripts or other files that are a part of the project to remove things that make it harder for the program or library to be packaged in Guix. You often will use a custom build step and use this substitute star procedure to accomplish this. It basically lets you specify a series of rules which have a string or regular expression to match for, and then a replacement string to then use, where that could allow you to like replace paths that are in the files, or could allow you to add or remove lines. Like you could target a specific line based on the text and then insert some lines after that effectively. So this is something that will be necessary. Unfortunately, packaging things for Guix often requires a little bit of monkey patching, and this is the way that you would do that. So I'm removing this line from the project.janet file to accomplish this. Next is that after we finish building the program, before we, is this after installing? After building, let me check this 1 second. Yeah, right. After finishing the build, I'm adding a step after build. I want to wrap the JPM program with a wrapper script that sets certain environment variables. This is also something that will be pretty common for programs that need to be given a little nudge to help them find files the Guix way. Like maybe they're looking for things under the normal Linux file system hierarchy standard, normal root file system path structure. But since Guix doesn't use that, you have to tell it, hey, maybe like look over here instead by setting an environment variable. And this wrap program procedure is the way to generate a bash script that replaces the original executable with a script that sets those environment variables in the shell environment before invoking the real version of that script or binary that you are wrapping. So in this case, I'm basically setting a bunch of environment variables there to paths that I think are right, but in practice, they have not been working correctly. So we may have to fool with that a bit. We're not going to have time in the end, but we're talking about it. Maybe it will give somebody else some ideas on how to accomplish this. All right, so that's sort of the after step. The real step that matters here for building and installing, let's say, JPM is the build step. I'm replacing build with my own function that really just sets environment variables that are necessary to override the defaults for the bootstrap script for Janet, and then I invoke Janet against that bootstrap script, which just runs Janet with bootstrap.janet as a parameter. So by setting the dest-dir environment variable, prefix and CC, I'm letting the bootstrap script pick up the right places and tools to use for bootstrapping JPM using Janet, right? So that bootstrap script is going to use the dest-dir as the place where it's going to drop all the files after it finishes compiling JPM and then installing them to where it thinks it should live. I'm telling it I want it to be in the output path for this specific package or the build for this package. So that's going to be in the GNU store path for the Janet JPM package under the assumed root file system hierarchy that JPM is installing to. Okay? Does that make sense? Any questions so far? So this is kind of, these two places are the key parts for tricking JPM and Janet, or I guess really tricking JPM into doing the right thing. And it has been slightly tricky for me. We could actually go look at Omar's solution for this in a second as well, because he did it a bit differently than I did. But if you have not done this before, it's kind of interesting to see, sort of like when we saw with the build system a minute ago, calling setenv inside of this code actually does set the environment variable before running this program. So it's setenv actually is something that's in Guile, but this may be a special version of that. But it could be the normal Guile one, because we're just sort of setting the environment for the Guile interpreter that's going to eventually launch the program. So maybe that's how it works. I don't know. Any thoughts, questions? Okay. All right. So do we want to try to run this thing? Let's try to run this thing, because it did work at some point. Maybe it will still work. I will run Guix build -L, because I put this inside of my own dot files folder. So I'm adding my dot files folder to the load path so it can find this package. I'm going to use the actual package name of Janet-JPM, and we'll see if it builds. Omar says, I think the wrap program will not allow you to define or override those in variables in runtime. It does that, though, because that's the whole point, is that it creates a script. In fact, we'll take a look at it right now, that sets those environment variables right before launching that application. So this build did complete because, you know, I was working on this and it did work back then. Let's go take a look at the build output folder that was created. So if you look at that, we have a full output folder for Janet JPM with the version number that we are looking at that has bin, include, lib, and share. So emulating the normal root file system hierarchy. We have bin, which includes JPM and JPM real. JPM is that wrapper script. Take a look at that. You will see that it is exporting all of those Janet variables before it goes and runs what it calls the .jpm real file. So wrap program renames the original program that you're referring to right here. Where is it? Yeah. So I'm saying I want to wrap the program that is represented by this path, looking in the output folder for the build /bin/JPM. I want to wrap that program with a script that sets these variables. So what it does is it renames that program to .jpm-real so that it has a unique name for it. And then it replaces that file with a script like this one, which sets the environment variables before executing it and makes sure that it inherits the environment so that the real program picks up those variables and uses them. Okay? So we're setting the Janet path to the Janet path of Janet JPM, which we should take a look at in a second. We're setting the Janet bin path also to Janet JPM because many binary files will probably end up getting installed there. You can install Janet programs as binaries basically and run them on the command line, kind of like with npm. The lib path needs to be under the Janet installation folder. So Janet itself is installed in a different folder, and the library files for building Janet into a program are with Janet, not with JPM. So we have to refer to the lib path for that separately. Same thing for the include files, the header files for building Janet into a C program. You need the header file to be able to pull in all the APIs for Janet to compile against it. So we need those two things to come from the installation path of Janet itself. So that's why we have some different paths here. So we ran Guix build and it did work. But now I kind of want to test this out a little bit. So I'm going to use Guix shell instead. Guix shell. I have to use -L dot files to make my path known. Otherwise, it will not recognize the Janet JPM package. And then I want it to run JPM just by itself at first. All right, so now we see the output of JPM. It compiled correctly. It shows the output of the basically the usage help, let's say. I want to run the show paths subcommand because this actually shows you the paths that it will use for various things that it might do. So show-paths. And this is a place where I realized that I had some problems with how I had things set up. It tells you what the bin path is, which is what we set it to. The mod path, which is the path where it starts looking for modules. This is that Janet tree path. It's under /lib/Janet under Janet JPM. Now, this is not going to work when we start packaging Janet dependencies with Guix, because it's always going to look inside of this Janet JPM path, and Janet dependencies will not get installed here no matter what JPM wants to happen. So this mod path has to be modified somehow, and that's part of the problem we're running into. Sys path for Janet is the actual path to Janet itself, but I actually do have this set up wrong, because if we need to look at things that are part of Janet, then, which I'm not actually sure what is in there. Let's take a look at that folder path. I'm kind of curious to see what's in there. Let's paste, thank you. Under lib/Janet, no, there's nothing there. There's no lib files there. So really, it doesn't matter too much for that, it seems. The things that matter for Janet are the bin path for being able to invoke Janet itself. The etc. path is for the cache for linking. I'm not sure how much that matters in the end. It might matter, no. The include path is very necessary because it has all the header files for Janet, so we need that for being able to build. The lib path is necessary for both package config and the lib files that will be linked into your program, whether it's a static link or dynamic link. And this libjanet folder that we saw is empty. Share is only needed for man pages and documentation. So really, it's just that lib path and the include path that are super necessary. So if I go back to the lib output, lib path is correct because we want it to come from the Janet folder. Header path is correct because we want it to come from the Janet folder on under that include path. So that will help C programs build. But we still have the problem of the mod path not being extensible. So Omar says, the tricky part for me was trying to run JPM build and it was not able to find the Janet lib, so I had a step to copy the Janet include and lib to the JPM output paths. Yeah, it's not really necessary because of the ability to individually set all these different paths. That is one thing that is good about how Janet works, or at least the JPM installer works, is that it lets you be very granular about the individual paths that will be used when creating and building JPM applications, or Janet applications, let's say, with JPM. So this does more or less work. Just to try that out, let's try to create a project really quickly. I've got something we can do for that. So let's go to, we had one last week that we were using, but let's just start a new one anyway. Projects code, JPM test. Let's just go in there. Sure, why not? Whatever. Make dir -p projects code JPM test. Okay. Now I'm gonna go into that folder. So cd projects code JPM test. Come on, man. JPM test. There we go. All right, so we're in the folder now. Now with JPM, I'm just gonna run it through Guix shell, no problem. In fact, I probably need to pull in Janet and GCC toolchain. I'll probably have to do some other wacky stuff as well. In fact, maybe I should switch over to eat for this. All right, let's go to eat and then go to projects code JPM test. Okay, I'm gonna just drop into a Guix shell for this. Hopefully this is not gonna be a total headache. All right, so now we have access to JPM. It's all there, all good. GCC is there as well, cool. I definitely need to export CC equals GCC because otherwise JPM gets confused because there's no CC on the command line. It's not aliased. So you have to kind of set that up first. And apparently whenever you set CC when using the bootstrap script, it doesn't remember what you told it to use, but maybe that makes sense. Maybe you conditionally want to use other things, but at least with Guix, there is no CC alias by default. You would probably have to set it yourself.